And we are live. Welcome back to today's national weather forecast. Throughout today's video, we're just going to follow this one storm system as it moves across the country. It's first going to bring some rain and snow to the west, then it's going to bring some snow to the plains, and then move up into the Midwest, and then have a big stretch of rain that goes all the way over the southeast, and then some of the snow moves off and hits the northeast. So we're just going to follow that system as it moves across the country. The other thing this storm's going to be doing is pulling down cold air. We could have some temperatures next week that are 40 to 50 degrees below average. So that's another big part of the story that we're going to be talking about as we follow that system across the country. As always, if you're only interested in one of these regions, after the live stream, I'll add the chapters to the video so you can just click in the time bar below to go directly to the region that you're interested in. But if you're interested in listening to this whole story as this storm moves across, we'll start right here in the west, where it is currently bringing some rain and snow to Washington, Oregon, and even parts of California. Although that's not going to last much longer, that's going to move off. We have one more little system that's going to follow behind it and hit Washington, so we will be diving into that. But the big story is what this system will do as it continues to move off. Right around here is when, this is early Thursday morning, this is when it starts bringing in some moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. This is what's going to charge this storm back up and give it some of that moisture that's needed to drop that snowfall over the Midwest. So it's bringing in the moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, bringing down cold Arctic air from Canada. That's going to be a big part of the story, that cold air. And then you can see what happens as it strengthens and moves through the Midwest. We're going to get some heavy snowfall rates in Iowa, Wisconsin, northern parts of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, and then some more heavy snow into Michigan. Overall, I would call it a moderate winter storm. It doesn't look like it's going to be anything crazy. We do have some warnings that I'll go over in a second, but for the most part, I'd call it a moderate winter storm. And then you can see it pushes up north. It doesn't move straight into the northeast. It goes up into Canada. So the northeast really just gets hit by the outer arm of this system as it moves through. But then the other part we're going to have to watch with this is the backside of this low is almost going to reform into this new little system. So we're going to take a detour on this storm as it moves across the north to see what the bottom part could do in the southeast as it reforms and possibly forms a new storm that moves up the northeast. That one is pretty speculative because that's a ways off in the forecast, but it's all part of the same system that we're going to be talking about. So I mentioned that it is a moderate storm, and I'm going off of this map, which is the Winter Storm Severity Index. This gray color is limited impacts. The yellow is minor impacts. Orange is moderate, which means the storm is going to start to have moderate impacts on your life. Red and purple are where you get into major and extreme. And you can see for the west, as this system moves through, we get some areas that are moderate up in Washington and Idaho and Montana. Parts of Northern California are more in that minor range. And then it's going to move off into the Midwest. And that's where, remember, it strengthens, brings that moisture in from the Gulf of Mexico, brings that cold air down from Canada, and that's where it reforms and strengthens into a storm that can drop some, for the most part, moderate impacts over Wisconsin and the upper parts of Michigan. And you do see one little area that is expected to have major impacts, which is where you could start to see property damage, and that's where you start having some safety dangers with the storm. But overall, that's a pretty small part of the storm to call the whole thing major. So overall, I'd say just your average winter storm. We are going to look at Iowa, though, because there's something in particular going on there that we'll have to keep our eye on. And then for the Northeast, just limited impacts for now, as it was just getting brushed by that outer arm of snow. So this is the warnings. I know I just called it an average storm, but we do have to look at the warnings because there's a combination of factors that you do have to look out for. So you can see we do still have winter storm warnings in effect in some parts of the West. I think those will be gone within the next couple of hours, if they're not already gone by the time you're watching this. And that's going to be gone as the system moves off. You can see it moves off mostly into Montana, where we're going to get some cold air and some snowfall. And then here's what's going on as it moves into the Midwest. That's why we have to take a good look at Iowa. There is a blizzard warning in effect there. The reason for that is right when we're dropping some heavier snowfall rates, we're going to be mixing it with some extreme wind gusts. So with all that wind and snow, that's where it really reduces visibility, and then you can get a blizzard warning. So we will be taking a look at that. But for the most part, again, moderate winter storm. So right here, let's just take a look at the overall pattern as this moves across. You can see the bottom part of this low actually gets chopped off and then moves off into the Pacific. That's one of the key things that I'm watching right now, because I'm really curious to see if it moves back and hits California again. As of right now, I would say it's just going to move off into the Pacific, and we're just going to have a big high pressure over the west for quite some time. As far as I can look into the forecast, it looks like we're just going to have this big ridge sitting over us. No exciting weather for the west for quite some time. But then as that system continues to move across the country, watch right about here. This is when, like I said, it was strengthening, and then it hits the Midwest. You can see it kind of tighten up right there. And then right here is where you start to see all that cold air fill in behind it. That might actually be the biggest part of the story today, is that cold air that's going to be filling in. And then remember I mentioned that one little detour we're going to take to the southeast? That's the back end of this system right here. It might have the potential to form into another little storm that could move up the coast. But again, watch all that cold Arctic air filling into the Midwest and the eastern parts of the country. To look at that on the temperature anomaly map, that's just a fancy way of saying average temperatures, how far off from the average temperatures are you? You can see for the most part today, the eastern half of the country is below average, and the western half is for the most part above average. As we move forward, you can see there's a period before this system gets to the Midwest where you're maybe 25 to 30 degrees above average throughout the middle of the country. Then as that system continues to move east, that's where it starts bringing down that cold air, and you can see that perfect front as this system just fills in across the country. You can just watch that front move. That's right where we're going to be getting that heavy rainfall that we'll look at in a second. But then watch this cold Arctic air as it just blasts in towards this weekend and then the start of next week. That's where we could start getting temperatures 30, 40, maybe even 50 degrees below average. And you can see it's continuing to fill in throughout basically the entire country, it almost looks like, except for the very southwest and parts of the very east-southeast. You can see 45 degrees below average in Montana. I have a friend in Montana. I might have to let him know this is on the way for possibly next Wednesday. And you can see parts of the Midwest, 45 to 50 degrees below average as well. And then that's just going to fill in and just continue into as far off as we can look into the forecast. So that's a big part of the story that we're going to have to keep our eye on over the next week. That'll be an interesting feature to watch develop. So like I said, there's also some precipitation associated with this storm. You can watch it fill in through the southeast. Don't as much pay attention to what's going on in the north here. That's mostly snow. We'll take a look at that in a second. But watch in the southeast as that wave of rain just pushes through right there. Exactly what I was just showing as that front just moves across the region right there. If we want to take a look at the snowfall, we can see what's going to be accumulated. You see it starts in the west. We do still have maybe another 6 to 8 inches to pick up here. And then keep your eye on Washington, because that's where the back end of this system starts to move in, and we do get some more snow up in Washington that you'll see filling in a second. But then it moves off into Wyoming, Utah, middle parts of the country, re-strengthens right here, and then that's when it hits the Midwest. This is looking into Thursday and Friday, and you can see there are some locations that are going to be picking up some decent snowfall with this one. Maybe 6 to 10 inches in some places. I'm not seeing locations picking up more than a foot, but we'll have to keep our eye on it because it's weather. Who knows what can happen once the storm's actually there. And then remember that last little dusting that's going to hit the Northeast. Not going to be too impressive for the Northeast, at least based on what the models are showing right now. That's a ways off in the forecast by the time it gets all the way across the country, so we'll have to keep our eye on it to see what it does there. But you can see in the upper Northwest, with that back end of the system, we will be picking up maybe 2 to 3 feet of snow in total through this week and into this weekend with the back end of that system. So we're going to be diving into Washington as well. And maybe now is a good time to dive into the West. We'll just start with that low right there. Early this morning, we were getting some heavy rain, heavy snow throughout Oregon and Northern California. But then you can see it's just going to move off by the time we get into this afternoon especially. I mean, looking out my window, it looks like it's already cleared up in California. But if there's anything left, any last remaining rain or snow, it's going to be gone pretty soon. But then there is that second little system following behind it where we're going to get some heavy snow up into Washington, Idaho, and Montana. Now that is going to be something to watch as well, but ways off in the forecast for the rest of the country there. So if we look at that another way, we can see that system just move throughout the day today. And then for the most part, a large majority of the West is just covered in this big ridge that's just going to block precipitation for us for as long as I can see in the forecast. Not much going on here. The one thing to keep our eye on though is what happens with this little cutoff low. Remember I said the bottom of this trough gets cut off and then moves off into the Pacific. I'm going to be watching this one closely to see if it could take a turn and come back into maybe Southern California or something. But as of right now, it's moving off, and then California especially, just in a big ridge, not much precipitation. Like I said though, there is that second part of the system. You can see it push through right there where Washington and Idaho continue to get some snow, and that's going to continue at least through this weekend as we just keep seeing that waiver, bringing that cold air down where we continue to pick up snow in Washington and Idaho. So if we zoom into the Northwest, not much going on in Southern California or Arizona, so I think the best place to focus is up here. This is what was going on early this morning, that heavy rain and snow throughout Washington, Oregon, northern parts of California. That was about an hour and a half ago. So if you're living in these areas, you probably felt this, but as we move into this afternoon, the storm weakens, it loses its energy, it already dropped all its rain and snow on us, and then by the time we move into this evening, it's moved off farther into the central plains. So the worst with that first part of the system is behind us, or the best of it if you are a fan of snow. And then you can watch the back end of it start to move into Washington as we get into really right after the first part of the system moves through, the second part starts following in Washington, getting into maybe Thursday afternoon. That's when we could start seeing rain and snow move into Washington, Idaho, Montana, and you can see how long it's going to just sit over Washington and Idaho. That's why we're going to have some great accumulations when we total up what we're going to get with this storm. If we want to see those accumulations, we can click here. That's what's going to fall throughout the day today. Maybe getting another 6 to 8 inches through Oregon, very northern parts of California and on the Oregon border. Might be able to get up to a foot in some locations, and then 2 to 4 inches throughout Idaho, Montana, parts of Nevada, Utah, and Wyoming. Now, keep an eye out for Washington and Idaho as the next part of this system pulls through it. We start to build in over a foot by Saturday evening, and then throughout the start of next week, that's where our totals could get up to 2 to 3 to possibly even 4 feet throughout the Cascades and select locations in Idaho. So I think the best place to zoom in here would be Washington, because it seems like that's where the most action's going on over the next week when it comes to this big trough that's just going to continue to fill in across the country. You can see it's tempting to call it two different systems, but it really is just one giant trough that's filling in across the entire country that's causing all this weather for the next week. So you can see by 4 a.m., Washington, very southern parts, was still picking up some heavier snowfall rates, but then that eases up. They get a break throughout the day today and working into tonight, and then it starts to show up again as rain and snow early tomorrow morning, about 4 a.m. on Thursday. That's where the next part of the system starts to fill in, and then it fills in fast. We start getting heavier snowfall rates, heavier rain, and that's going to sit over the region throughout the day Thursday. As we get into Thursday night, that's where it's really started to strengthen. Heavier rain, heavier snow, maybe 0.1 to 0.2 inches per hour, maybe getting up above 0.2 inches per hour at some places. And then again, it's rain along the coast because that's where your temperatures are nice and moderated by the relatively warmer ocean. And then up in the higher elevations where we have the Cascades, that's where it's colder. That's where you can pick up some of this great snowfall. And then that's going to be gone by Friday at 10 p.m. So it's a pretty quick mover, but you are going to pick up some good accumulations with that, as we can see here. So that's what you've picked up throughout this morning, 6 to 8 inches in the southern parts of the state. And then as we click through, let's just see how much we're going to get with this system. Possibly 2 to 3 feet in total by Sunday, February 7th. So we're going to have to keep our eye on this area. Looks like we're going to get some nice snow in that location. So then let's track this storm as it continues to move across the country. We were just talking about it in the west, dropping maybe in total 2 to 3 feet of snow over Washington if we sum up the next week. And then it's going to move off into Montana and the central plains here as it starts to bring in that moisture, bring down that cold air. That's what's going to allow it to strengthen and hit the Midwest. So we're really going to dive into the Midwest right here. We're going to look at Iowa, where we do have that blizzard warning. I'll show it again because there is a blizzard warning in effect over Iowa. And that's because we're mixing this snowfall with extreme wind gusts, which I'll also show you in a second. But as this system continues to strengthen, move up north, it's almost like it moves down south, picks up its moisture, and then brings it right up into the Midwest to drop some heavy snow over Wisconsin and Michigan. So that's going to first come in, let's see, first hits Iowa about 4 in the morning on Thursday. And then it's dropping some good snow over Wisconsin and Michigan throughout the day Thursday, and then it moves off north. So it's a pretty quick mover. It's going to be dropping snow mostly throughout the day Thursday, possibly sticking around a little bit for early Friday morning. So the reason I'm calling this just your average winter storm, a moderate storm, is because based on the Winter Storm Severity Index, that's what they're calling it. Minor impacts for the majority of the Midwest, even limited impacts where it's mostly just light rain. It's a very northern storm. That's one thing that seems to be the case with this one. It's mostly affecting Washington in the west, and then it's mostly affecting the upper parts of Wisconsin and Michigan in the Midwest. And then where you have those warmer temperatures, that's where you're just getting some rain. So minor impacts, even though Iowa is in the minor impacts, that is where we have that blizzard warning. So be sure to stay updated with local resources there. Then you can see moderate impacts throughout Wisconsin. Moderate impacts basically means it can start to cause some property damage and could disrupt life, but it's not anything major. Where we do have one location where major impacts are expected is in upper Michigan here. So if you live in this location, definitely stay updated with the resources because that is where major impacts are expected. So let's follow this system as it moves across. You can see that's where it starts to dip down and pick up that moisture, and then it comes up and hits the Midwest. Now on the back end of it, this might be the biggest part of the story, even more than the snow that we're going to get with it or the blizzard warning in Iowa. It's the cold air that this system is going to be pulling down behind it. So you think about a low pressure system. Around a low, you have counterclockwise rotation. That's what allows the moisture to be pulled up and what allows the cold air to be pulled down. Well, when it comes to this system, it's really going to pull that cold air down. You can see those purple colors moving in throughout the entire Midwest and Central Plains. And then it's going to have multiple waves. Just like Washington is seeing multiple waves of this storm. It's easing up right now, but then it's going to pick back up tomorrow morning. That's what's going on with basically this whole system as it moves across the country. It has the first wave and then a second one that comes in behind it that almost appears to be even stronger. So when that second wave comes in, that's when we get really cold air pulling in. And I know really isn't a very scientific or accurate term, so let's actually look at the temperature anomalies that we will be seeing. So you can start to see this front as this system moves. Keep your eye on that because it's pretty cool to watch right there. Super defined line between that cold and warm air as that system moves through. And then there's that first blast. That's when it drops a bunch of snow on the Midwest. And then behind that system is when it starts pulling down this cold air. As we get into this weekend, getting into Saturday night, into Sunday, and then the start of next week, that's where 30, 40, maybe even 50 degree below average temperatures start to pull in from Montana all the way into the Midwest. And that's going to be sticking around, it looks like, for basically all of next week. So next week might just be absolutely freezing on the, literally freezing on the eastern half of the country. That's now pushing all the way into Thursday, and we're still 40 to 50 degrees below average in the Midwest, working into the Northeast as well, and even down into the Southeast. So that might be the biggest part of the story, the Arctic blast of cold air that's following in behind this system as it slowly just inches its way across the country. So if we want to actually dive into what those temperatures will be and a good graphic for how this system works, there it is down there. Remember I said it drops down south. It almost looks like it's going to move into the southeast for a second. It's pulling in that moisture. Think of that just supplying our system and then pulling down that cold air. And then right when you think it's going to move into the southeast, it jumps up north here and then brings all that moisture and cold air right above Wisconsin. That's why this is a location where you can see the combination of, wow, this is a great graphic to show exactly what I'm talking about here. You have the moisture pushing in right there. You have the cold air pulling down right there. That's where we're getting that heavy snowfall as we work into Thursday. And then let's just watch this cold air. This is now showing surface temperatures, not just temperature anomalies. Watch that cold air continue to pull in throughout the next few days into this weekend. We're getting below zero throughout parts of North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and then maybe in the teens to possibly even 20s below zero at some times in some places. So that's a big part of the story we're going to have to keep our eye on. Look at that, maybe getting 20 below zero in St. Paul as we get into Monday. That's a big part of the story that I'm definitely going to be following. So let's take a look at the precipitation that we're actually going to expect as this system moves in. You can see not much going on throughout the day today. We get the first little trace of this system maybe late tonight or early Thursday morning. Then it's fully moved into Iowa as we get into maybe 4 a.m. on Thursday, and then this is when it starts to strengthen. Those two colliding forces of moisture and cold air start to really build in over the Midwest. Heavy snowfall in Iowa, Wisconsin, northern parts of Illinois, and then it's a quick mover. That's another part of the story. Moves off northern parts of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, still getting some snow as we work through the day Thursday. Heavier snowfall rates in select locations of Michigan, and then there's that bullseye up in northern Wisconsin where we will see the largest totals overall with this storm. And then it's already gone as we get into Friday morning. So, or Friday afternoon, we could still be getting some flex, but that's not much to get too excited about there. So let's take a look at the accumulated snowfall as it builds in. First traces coming in, again, 4 a.m. on Thursday, moving into Iowa. And then it's a quick mover. So it already starts to build in 2 to 4 inches into Wisconsin but by the time you're commuting tomorrow morning, and then it continues to move up north. Instead of moving right east into the northeast, looks like it just jumps up into Canada. And in total, 6 to 8 inches throughout Wisconsin, upper parts of Michigan, 6 to 8 inches as well. That's why it's just considered a moderate storm. We're not going to be in the foot range when it comes to snow accumulation. There's some locations that could see it, but for the most part, 6 to 8 inches of snowfall, but it is over a wide region, so it's something to enjoy if you like winter weather and you live in the Midwest. Now, with that being said, remember that I did point out that there is a blizzard warning in Iowa. So even though I'm calling it an average winter storm and nothing to worry about, just something to be enjoyed, there is that blizzard warning, and that's where we're combining this 2 to 4 inches of snow with some extreme winds. So watch as this system moves in right there. You can almost see the wave of this system move through right like that. That's where we have those extreme winds. Parts of Iowa could be getting 50 mile per hour wind gusts. So that's why we have that blizzard warning. We're mixing that snow with these extreme winds that kicks it up, reduces visibility, and causes a blizzard warning. So that is something to point out and something to think about. So if we take a local look, we're going to be diving into Wisconsin because it seems like that's the state in the Midwest that's getting the bulk of this storm. You can see first little bits showing up 12 a.m. on Thursday. As we get into 6 a.m., that's where the snow starts to cover a wider region with some freezing rain in the southern parts of the state. So if you commute early, watch out in the southern parts of the state, but then it's quickly just going to fill up with snow throughout all of Wisconsin. At about 12 p.m. Thursday, pretty much the entire state is covered in snowfall at this point. But again, it's a quick mover, so western parts of Wisconsin already out of this storm by 6 p.m. Thursday. And then we continue to get maybe 0.2 to 0.4 inches per hour in the northeastern parts of Wisconsin, working into upper parts of Michigan. Then it's just dropping some tiny flakes as we get into 12 p.m. Friday, but for the most part, it's gone. That's the last big part of the storm on 12 a.m. Friday. So it's a quick moving storm as it goes through Wisconsin. If we want to take a look at the totals, first bits show up around 12 p.m. on Thursday, or this is showing the accumulations. So by 12 p.m., that's what you've picked up, 2 to 4 inches. And then I got a little confused here because the storm moves so fast, you can't really use this to see when it builds in because it all just builds in over about 6 to 8 hours. You can see 2 to 4 inches by 12 p.m. Thursday. By 6 p.m. Thursday, that's where we get some locations up to 6 inches. And then that's where it starts to fill into the more northern places as it moves north. Then getting up to 6 to 8 inches throughout the majority of Wisconsin and upper parts of Michigan by Friday. So it's a quick moving storm. And then as it continues to move, it will go off into the northeast, but I do want to take a quick detour here before we follow it into the northeast. What I want to point out is this stretch of rainfall that's going to be pulling through the southeast right there, just like in a wave. And then the back end of this system is the real thing that we're taking the detour into the southeast for. I wouldn't get too excited about that quick bit of rain. What is the most interesting thing about the southeast right now is the back part of the system. Yesterday was showing this possibility of reforming into a new storm. So we're going to have to keep our eye on this. You can see that low appear on early Sunday morning, and that's what we're going to have to keep our eye on. It's really the back end of this system we've been talking about. But that yesterday was showing right over the southeast, dropping heavy rainfall, and then moving up the coast and becoming a nor'easter. As of right now, the model has that low moving off. but that is something we will have to keep our eye on because that could end up causing another nor'easter if that decides to move up the coast. But we'll see in the forecast there. So just following what's going on and better explaining what I was just trying to articulate, there's that first part of the system where we're getting the rain through the southeast, and then you get this little second bump that follows in right behind it. That is what we're going to be looking at to possibly cause that heavy rain over the southeast and then possibly the nor'easter as we get into the start of next week. So if we want to just see that rainfall as it goes through, we'll just do this quick. That's showing Thursday evening. You can see it's just a perfect strip of rain that's going to spread across the region like a wave, dropping some heavy rainfall in some places, so it is worth noting and pointing out. If we want to look at the accumulated totals, let's go right here and just click all the way through. Look how it really just goes through like a wave right there. And then as we click through, parts of Florida could get over an inch of rain, parts of Georgia maybe up to 2 inches, but for the most part, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, you're for the most part just getting 0.2 to 0.3 inches of rain. That's probably nothing compared to what you guys can usually get down in your region. But we will be keeping an eye on that next system to come through because that's where we could get some real action going on. So now let's get off of our detour and follow that low as it, remember it started in the west, moved into the plains, and then the Midwest here, picked up some moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, pulled down some cold air, and then dropped some good snow over the Midwest, moderate snowstorm, average snowstorm, and then it's going to have the very trailing arm of it go through the northeast right there. So we'll look at how much snow we could be expecting with that. So just looking at it another way, there's that big trough right here, and then it's going to build down, and that's right where it hits the northeast. At this point, seems like the precipitation's done, but this is when it's really just starting to bring down all that cold air. That's the big story for next week. Possibly 40 to 45 degrees below average throughout the majority of the eastern half of the country. Let's just see if I could find that map again real fast. That's what we could be looking like as we work into next week. So definitely something to watch there. 30 to 40 to 50 degree below average temperatures throughout next week. Let's see if I can find my way back here. Yeah, so that's what's going on in the northeast as that system moves through. Let's actually take a look at the precipitation. Oh, one thing to point out, we are still getting the last little effects from Winter Storm Orlena here. Just a couple little flecks of snow, and then because of the winds, we are getting some lake effect, but then that is going to ease up, and then that will be gone by tomorrow morning. So some locations still picking up some snow with Winter Storm Orlena throughout the day today. Then I should mention that before we dive into the next system. So as that next system moves in, first little traces showing up late Thursday night into early Friday morning, and then that's going to spread off into Pennsylvania, parts of western New York, as you might be commuting on Friday. And then it's a fast mover. You guys are just getting the very trailing arm of this thing. So it's light snow and it's fast moving. It's already moved up into Maine as we get into Friday night, and then for the most part, it's gone. Couple little flakes left there. So let's take a look at the total accumulated snowfall. That's what you're picking up throughout the day today. Another 2 to 4 inches. So that's actually something to point out there. Up to 6 to 8 inches in Maine. Again, that is the very trailing effects of Winter Storm Orlena, dropping that last bit of snowfall on you. And it looks like West Virginia might be getting another inch as well. So let's click through here. That's that new system pushing in Thursday night into early Friday morning. As we fill it in, let's just click all the way through and see what we're getting. You can see Pennsylvania, 2 to 4 inches. West Virginia, you might have a total of 3 to 4 inches at this point. And then in New York, there could be one little tiny bullseye that gets a foot, but for the most part, we're about 1 to 4 inches throughout the entire Northeast. Select locations could be getting into that 5 to 6 inch range. So that's why I'm just calling it a moderate snowstorm. It's some snow, it's something to point out, but nothing too exciting at this point. But again, this for the Northeast is a ways off in the forecast, so conditions can change. And again, you are picking up some snow right now, so that's something to point out as well. You can see still picking up snow as we get into 1 p.m. today, and then for the most part, that winter storm Elena is finally gone from the Northeast. First little traces of this new system building in 1 a.m. on Friday as it moves into Pennsylvania and western New York. Then as we get into 7 a.m. Friday, that's where some of the heavier snowfall rates start to come in, maybe 0.1 inches per hour, and then it's a quick mover. By 1 p.m., it's already gone for the western parts of the state, and it's moved up into northern parts of New York, Vermont, parts of Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. And then you're just getting some very last light snow throughout the day, really Friday night into Saturday. Some last little traces with this system. Now, if we look at the totals, I'll just click through real fast here. That's what we could be getting. There's some locations, 6 to 8 inches. That's actually pretty significant right there. We'll have to keep our eye on if this does in fact become a major snowstorm. Based on how it's performed for the rest of the country at this point, I would say not so much, but we'll have to keep our eye on it because weather forecasts change and who knows what can happen. I will also just comment on the possibility, because this will potentially affect the Northeast as well. When the storm system moves through here, there's a back end of it that has the potential to come down, grab some moisture from the southeast right here. This is when you see it start to form and then form right off the coast of the southeast right here. Yesterday's model had this going up the coast and turning into what looked like a major snowstorm for the Northeast, but the model today has that low moving off into the Atlantic. So that is a big thing that we're going to have to keep our eye on to see if that does end up happening and if it does move up the coast, because in that case, that's where we're pushing in moisture, pulling down cold air, and possibly getting large amounts of snow. But as of right now, models say not going to happen. So that's the overall snapshot of the snow the Northeast and New York in particular is going to be getting over the next few days and working into this weekend. Select locations, maybe getting up to 6 to 8 inches. So just doing a summary of this storm that we've followed throughout this video as it moves across the country. It was bringing some heavy rain and snow to the west today, and then it starts by this afternoon and working into this evening. It's already moved off into the central plains. Now there is a back end of this system that's going to bring some heavy snowfall to Washington and Idaho come Thursday into Friday. So that's what's going on for the west. California looks like we're going to be under a giant ridge, although we're going to have to keep our eye on that cutoff low to see if it turns back around and decides to hit us. So there's that system as it continues to move. This is where it gets moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, brings down that cold air, and then hits the Midwest, dropping 6 to 8 inches throughout Wisconsin. We have a blizzard warning in Iowa, upper parts of Michigan getting up to 8 inches as well. But again, just your average snowstorm, moderate impacts are expected. Then we're going to get that stretch of rainfall pushing over the southeast while this trailing arm of the system hits the northeast as the low itself moves up into Canada. Now, the biggest thing I'm going to be watching in the forecast as we move forward is the back end of this system, still part of the same overall pattern that has the potential to drop down off the southeast and form a new low as we work into Sunday. That's a big thing to keep our eye on, because if that ends up moving up the coast, we might have another major snowstorm. So that's what's going on in today's national weather forecast. And if you want to stay updated with the top weather stories going on throughout the country, you can subscribe to Holt Hanley Weather. And I hope you have a great day, and thanks for watching.